Hey guys, it's Guy here. If you've missed the first video, this is a series in which I'm essentially trying to teach you everything I know about UX design. Been doing that for over 10 years now. And today I want to address essentially what's the first step of any UX design project. You were given some sort of instruction, you were given a task by somebody, and now you are dealing with a dreaded blank page, the new file on Figma, and how do you start? Regardless of whether you are being tasked with designing an entirely new product or adding a new feature into a product, I think you should try as much as possible to categorize it, to try to look around and figure out where does this product or feature fit, kind of like in the universe of products and features that already exist out there. And that's going to help you kind of like create a picture for the environment in which you are building. And from my example here, I'm saying we're going to build a CRM product. CRM is a customer relationship management software. There are tons of those. And in this case, it's going to be special because it's focused on small businesses and content creators, in particular for the German market. Like, why the German market? Well, why not? I'm based in Germany, and I thought that makes it for an interesting case. So what's the first step? Well, after, I gave it some thought and realized, okay, this is another one of those, in the sense like it's just another CRM. And I understand the market and understand, some specificity about the positioning of the product, which in this case is German market, but it could be anything. You could say like it's for developers or it's for farmers. Who knows? It's still a CRM, So what I'm going to do next is I am going to look at other products that somehow share some of these categories, or at least one of these categories, with the product I'm building. So I'm going to look at other CRMs. I'm going to look at other software for small businesses and content creators. And I'm going to maybe try to find an intersection. Are there any software out there that are for German small businesses? And my goal with that is, first and foremost, to know like what kinds of software my users are used to look at on a daily basis. And then later on, I'll try to kind of like extract some patterns that the users are used to and use those in my design. So the question now is how to go about doing that. And of course, there are many, many different ways to do research, and I'll just show you my favorite ones. Of course, websites like G2 or Capterra, where you can have, reviews of software, are a very good starting point. So if I'm, working on a CRM product, I could just write here CRM, search for CRMs, and, if I wouldn't know that HubSpot is one of the top CRMs in the world, I would have found out now. And my goal here is really just, look around. Maybe I'm going to open some of these landing pages. I'm going to try the products if they offer a free trial. I'm going to look at some of the reviews. Just get into it. If this is a new industry you're getting into, then the first step, I'm going to say like spend at least like a day on it. Just get into it, try to get a feel for how good the products are that you're kind of like up against, and how people are thinking about it and how they're using it as much as you can, and that's it. Another very good tool that I'm actually going to suggest for a later step today is Mobbin. Mobbin is a paid tool that is worth every cent that it costs, and it's essentially a database of screenshots of many, many products out there. So it allows you to see inside of any product. So if I would like to see inside HubSpot, for example, which I just found out on G2 that it's one of the top CRM tools, I'll just go here, find HubSpot, and they have a lot of different ways to navigate the screenshots. I could look at flows, for example, and see, let's see how HubSpot filters contacts, and I would have a lot of inspiration, to start with if this is what I was going to design now. But normally what I do is I just find kind of like the 3 or 4 most interesting examples of each, and I essentially just copy the screenshots into Figma. I just place them here, kind of like as a reminder of, who are the peers of this software that I'm building now. And might be HubSpot, might be Atio, very good, well-designed tool, and that's essentially it. So now I know kind of like what's my domain, right? So I'm designing a CRM software. It's for the German market. It's for small businesses and content creators. And my job now is kind of like to try and understand how to shape, I want to say, like a generic CRM into a CRM that is for small businesses and content creators in the German market. But I hope you agree that now things got a lot easier. Regardless of what CRM I look at, I always have some sort of table like this. And the first column is always the name. And, a lot of things are common. Apparently every CRM has a contacts list or a contacts object. They don't call it people or whatever, they call it contact, because this is a contacting tool. And all those things just, remove decisions from my side. Like I was saying in a previous video, your job is most likely not to create something new. Your job is rather to create something that feels familiar and does something slightly different or slightly better. The next step that I suggest that you do, regardless of you starting a new product from scratch, of course, that's much more complex, or if you just add a new feature. And in this case, I'm just going to pretend we're adding the contact screen to this CRM product. I think the first thing you need to know, the first thing you need to do is to think about it in terms of information architecture. And what I mean with that is, I think the first thing, the highest level that you should think on is, what kind of information is part of this feature or screen do I need to display, essentially? And where does it fit in relation to each other? So a very practical example of that is if we look at the HubSpot contact screen here. What I would say the information architecture here is there is kind of like contacts as the top entity here. And inside that top entity contact, there are individual contacts, and inside each individual contact, there are several fields. In this case, email, phone number, contact owner, primary company. And this is obviously very apparent because it's on the screen now, but usually you're just going to hear it in a meeting and it's not that clear. So what I would start by doing is try to somehow visualize the information architecture. And the easiest way to do that is just with bullet points. Slightly more complex, but often necessary way to do that is with a flowchart, and I will show you both. So in this case, I would say it's the contacts page. Then within that you have a contact. Then within that, I'm actually going to say it's contacts page. Within that page you have the contacts list. Inside that list you have an individual contact. Inside each contact you have name, email on the same level, right? They are siblings. Phone, owner, and company. Then kind of like on the same level as the contact list, you have stuff like create contact and import, just for simplicity. And yeah, I think you get the gist, right? So you kind of make a very simplified visualization of what needs to go into that screen, right? And I think that helps you because when we transition to the world, of tables and, squares and divs and whatever, the same hierarchy needs to apply. So if I would do this like very schematically, if I would have like the contacts page here, and I know that somewhere within that contacts page, there needs to be the contacts list. And that's kind of like on the same hierarchy level, like not inside it, there needs to be a place with actions, which is going to be like create contact and import. And that's pretty much it, right? So actually the arrangement up there is kind of like this. And then I know that inside the contact list, I have the individual contacts. And I hope this makes sense to you. This is kind of the same structure that I'm seeing there. And if this was something more, out of the ordinary, it would help me understand like what kinds of sections I need on the page, just because each bullet here is then a section, so that's the mental model. And in this case, I think I went kind of like into a very, very specific detail, but kind of in a more abstract and I think more interesting way. I think the mental model is really the blueprint of the product or feature. So your goal is to make it as apparent as possible for someone using the product for the first time, how the product is organized. So what goes where. And in order to know that, you need to build a list of the things you have and group it in ways that make sense. Right, that's it for using bullet lists in order to represent hierarchy. But in many cases, in particular, if you're working, either with a more complex feature, or if you're now thinking about an entirely new product from scratch, the bullets they won't be enough. They won't be good enough at handling that kind of complexity. So an alternative to that is using flowcharts. And I just pulled up one here on FigJam, which is, I think, a great tool for that. It comes with Figma, as you know. And I could very easily recreate the same hierarchy, but now with these boxes. Contacts page on the top, contact list, create contact, import. And then I could go on here and inside the contacts list, I would have a contact. Then inside each contact, all the attributes of a contact, like name and email, etc. I won't bore you with the details, but you get the point. I think more often you're going to use this if you're thinking about a new product. So the flowchart is going to be more like a sitemap. So you have something like my CRM here on top, and maybe the boxes below are the top level navigation. So it would be like maybe contacts. Maybe another of the top level items is companies. If you have used a CRM in the past, this probably sounds familiar. Another might be, maybe deals. This is also where you're gonna map stuff like settings, like on the top level, usually on the navigation. Either there is profile and within that there's settings, or just settings directly there. You see where I'm going with this. And, in theory, I could kind of extend this tree, extend this mapping to contain pretty much every page, or even go deeper than the page and, sections within a page for the whole product. That's not very useful though. I think that's, this is also not something I would maintain kind of actively for the product, for months. I would just kind of recreate it as needed for the task at hand. So by now we've sorted our product or feature into a category or several categories. So we kind of know, what we're building and what other products exist kind of around us. We have examples to look at, etc. We've also already mapped the thing we're building on a very high level. And so what's the next step? I think if you look at this mental model, it will hopefully make your job very easy of matching the mental model with patterns that kind of support displaying that kind of information. So if you're working on a new product, maybe the first pattern that you're looking at is going to be layouting and navigation patterns. So likely you're going to look at your sitemap and you're going to think okay, so how many top level navigation items do I have? If I have a lot of them, then probably I need more like a sidebar layout where I have a lot of space to add many options. If it's just a few, then it could look quite empty. So maybe I opt for, an horizontal navigation on top. It's that kind of question that you should start asking yourself now. And it's kind of the same kind of reasoning for a feature. So in this case, it's contacts. I would say the main element of the contacts page is a list of contacts. So I probably need a table. Table is the pattern. So I'm going to look for tables, right? So in this case, I need to display a table of contacts. So I'm going to try find some good examples of that. And once again, we're narrowing down kind of the degrees of freedom that we have on the project. And it's funny because, a friend of mine who's, very experienced designer and design manager, etc., just called me the other day after he saw one of my videos and said, there's one tip that I always give my designers, which is tell them to kind of shift their mindset from figuring out the ideal solution to rather cutting out the solutions that don't work. And at first that didn't really click for me. I was like, okay, well, I never really thought that way. Can I really suggest that? But now I see that this whole process that I'm giving you is nothing more than a way of, cutting everything that doesn't work and narrowing down kind of like your search for the solution that works. And if now we have kind of like a universe of products we're building around, a high-level architecture, information architecture for the product or feature, we kind of know what patterns, from a UX perspective, that we want to use. The last thing is, how should it look like, which is style. How should our product look like? I think here, this is probably where, I can give you less input, because I think to a certain extent, there's also going to be taste involved. But part of your job, I think, as a designer is to try and find a style that matches the positioning and the brand. And that's something that you usually get from somebody, right? So if I would be, tasked with creating a product for developers, I can take that, task and do something about it in terms of design, picking the right design, the right style. And the process for me is pretty much the same. So you are going to try and find examples of the style you want to achieve with your product. And once again, you can do it any way you want. I think by just logging into your favorite products and taking that as inspiration, searching Google, searching Capterra G2. But my favorite is for sure Mobbin, because I can see the style of the inside of the product. I can copy it here to Figma very easily, etc. So that's essentially what I'm going to do now once again. Now, just for the sake of this example, to make it more interesting, let's say that the company I'm working with wants to appear kind of playful. One thing I'm going to do is I'm going to try to think of products that kind of have that brand. Like one of them that comes to my mind is MailChimp, for example. And I'll try and identify kind of like style elements that, in my opinion, are responsible for creating that vibe. So in this case, for example, they use this kind of like funky font. That's not something you see every day. So I'm going to copy that over. Since I don't really have any more ideas for fun looking products, I'm just going to like randomly search for other products, they kind of like hit the mark for me. This polywork seems interesting. Again, I see like some less common fonts at play here. And I'm going to do this, for as long as I need, to get an idea of in which direction I really want to go with style, But in the chapter of style, once I kind of know the direction I want to go, and I do that by collecting inspiration, collecting examples. And I think one thing to say on that note is that style is a relative thing, like people perceive style, always in comparison with some baseline. So for example, they're going to say, something is very clean, and that's always kind of like in their mind compared to this other tool that's not as clean, or this is playful, MailChimp is playful, compared to Microsoft Word. It's always a relative thing. And I think for you, and that's why it's important to do things in this order, I think you want to know kind of like what's the baseline in the market you're building, and then differentiate yourself, or kind of like set your style in relation to that baseline. So you don't overdo it, so you hit the mark, right? So that you are perceived the way you want and not kind of like over the top. But yeah, so let's say I am happy with the inspiration I've collected. Clearly, I'm going to go for a wide layout, quite simple. I have some funky typography, and yeah. So what's next? Next is to start designing, of course. But I think a big point here is that nobody really starts by designing, squares and and kind of like pill-shaped things for buttons. Most people these days start with some sort of design system. And if you're working in an existing company with an existing product, then chances are they have some sort of design system, or at least have some guidelines, and that's where you start. But if you're starting from scratch, then you need to create a component library, a design system first. So you don't want to be designing every single kind of input, every single kind of button. That's just a waste of time, because you will not design it better than the libraries that exist out there, and that's not the point of your job. Like, your company's value proposition is not having better buttons, right? So it's important to know that and not to waste time on that kind of thing, and you waste all your brains on, solving for the thing that this company exists for, the value they provide. And that's a very long way of saying that I think that if the company you work for doesn't have a design system, you shouldn't waste now 3 months creating one. You should at least start with one, and I'll show a couple of examples, and tweak it for your style, for your use case. And there are many options of existing design systems you could just buy and start using. I'll show a few. Untitled UI is one of the most famous ones. It's great because it's very broad. It has a lot of components, a lot of different elements you can pick and choose from. It's maybe not as good because it doesn't have kind of like a React or some sort of front-end counterpart. So your developers will have to kind of like re-implement everything that you design. But hey, it's an option. I think on the opposite side of that, you have something like ChatCN, which is essentially a React-only component library. So yeah, you could start with it, but then you have to manually design the components. Also not ideal. And very recently, I discovered something called Wedges from Lemon Squeezy. I mean, Lemon Squeezy is a company that does something entirely different from design systems, but they are kind of like open sourcing the system they've built for themselves. And it is a system that exists both in Figma as components that you can use in your designs, but also in React. So yeah, definitely worth giving it a try. But the point is just, it's not worth it to kind of like reinvent the wheel here. Even if you look across all these design systems, you'll see they're kind of like very similar. So start with one of them and tweak it to your style and to your specific needs, and save time on that. And that's it. Hopefully these 4 steps that I've shown in this video have created the feeling in you that it's not as hard to start anymore, that you kind of like know where you'd start if you were to lay the first components now on the screen. But we haven't done that yet, and that's what I want to do. In the next video, I want to essentially take this as input and start building a screen and show you kind of like how that looks like in practice, the challenges you'll see, you'll face, and how to get around them. If you liked this video, please let me know. That helps me kind of like know what kind of content I should do, and subscribe to the YouTube channel because I'll be posting more videos like this. And well, I hope to see you again here. Bye bye.